So the same way that we begin drawing a head that we're looking at face on, same way we're going to begin the face at a profile, and that is, as always, with the biggest shapes first, which you're taking the 10 steps to drawing. That is step number 1, go from big to small. So the biggest shape here is going to be the overall shape of the whole head, the skull and everything. So what I like to do is I'll often close one eye and what I call air trace the shape of the head in front of me. And actually, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to ignore my bun here, and I'm going to draw kind of what I'm seeing as a kind of pointed shape, almost like a teardrop upside down.
Okay, so what perspective did you draw here?
This is my chin.
Okay.
That's going to be the front of my face, and this is all the way to the back of my skull. Okay. And the next shape that I'm going to include just very loosely is the bun I have here, which is kind of a blobby shape. And that one you really don't have to worry about keeping accurate because it is, you know, it's not like a nose. If you have the hair bun off, nobody's going to get upset at you. And just for the record, I will not be upset at you if this looks nothing like me and is,
be assured of that.
No bueno. So I'm going to keep it this simple for now. And let's go ahead and start finding some guidelines that are going to bring the rest of the features together. So in the image, you saw that I had drawn a line between my forehead and my nose and my chin and my nose. And those are the 2 lines that I'm going to draw next. So for this, I'm going to share the screen for anyone who can't see the PDF print. So now what I'm doing is going from that chin line, the tip of the chin, little tip of that large face shape, I'm going to find that same angle. So it's not perfectly vertical, not all the way 45 degrees. Please, math teacher, if you have a suggestion of what degree that is, that would be helpful. I'm going to try and match that angle to the best of my ability. The bottom angle from the chin to the tip of the nose. Now the nose hasn't been drawn yet, so all I have to go on is that angle all by itself. And the next line I'm going to draw is the angle going the opposite direction. So from my nose to my forehead, where that projects out the most, I'm closing one eye.
So excuse me, you don't have the nose. You haven't drawn the nose.
I have not drawn the nose. That is key.
So you're saying, in other words, you're saying that you're drawing. This could be on the inside, like 130-degree angle between the 2 sides. Almost 150, I would guess, because it's close to a straight line.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
it's
guess
closer to a straight line.
Yeah, it's obtuse that way. I tend to just break them down one and then the other, because whenever you draw this, you're going to use your pencil trick, and I'm going to show you my actual face here so you can see what I'm talking about. So it's using only one pencil. If you were doing this in life and you had a live model, what you do is you close one eye and you're going to hold your pencil up. If you have both eyes open, it skews your perspective. So you got to close one eye. You hold up the pencil to recreate these white lines I have on the page. And you're matching from the chin to the tip of the nose.
Okay.
That would be what I want to see when I'm holding. So of course you're holding up your pencil in the air and you're just going to have to kind of move the pencil around till it matches your model, which I can't see what I'm doing here.
Okay.
Hence the PDF. And then separately you would use the other angle of the pencil. So that's why I break them down one at a time, because I'm using the tool that I have, which always we have some drawing utensil. And if you can master the pencil trick, you can draw almost anything. It helps you find, as we discovered last week, vertical alignment, horizontal alignment. It can help us find angles and proportions. So the more you master this ability to use your pencil to find everything from angles to measurements, you're going to be able to have, it's way better than having a ruler around, because you don't even have to pick up a different tool. So I have these angles, and it's okay if they're kind of floating around. I did aim to have the tip of that nose somewhat lower than halfway, but as long as those angles are correct, then it kind of somehow, I feel like the nose finds itself in the right position. And we're going to do essentially a contour drawing of the profile. So the line of the contour, or the outline of the face itself. This is where this negative space line, the angle that we drew, is so important. And this is going to be the hardest thing we do all night. So take a deep breath together and shake it out, because this is challenging. I'm not going to lie. So I'm going to draw. Hopefully y'all can see that all right as I go. And the first line that I look for is, I'm going to look for the overall negative space of the kind of cut out shape between underneath my nose, going down past my lips, all the way to my chin. So right now I have this general angle. Now I'm going to look for, okay, first of all, what is the really subtle little curve from the tip of my nose down to just where my nose meets my upper lip. And I'm seeing it as
concave, isn't it?
A concave, yes, a concave line. So something more or less like that.
That's not concave. So what's that line represent that you just drew?
Right here.
Dark line. Oh, just the nose. Okay, not the...
Just the bottom of... It's from where the tip of the nose meets the upper lip. Yeah. And I'm so grateful you're here to teach me math terms that I haven't heard in 20 years. Because I was like, concave.
Okay.
Well, obviously it would be useful. Convex or concave. So from here, I'm going to look more carefully. I'm not paying attention to my face. This is where the concept of negative space comes in. And negative space is, if I were drawing my hand, I'm not thinking about where my hand is. I'm drawing the negative space, or the air, the empty spaces between the fingers. And if I get those right, the hand drawing would appear. Same thing with the profile. Please ignore my face. Don't draw my face. Draw the empty space between that line we drew and the contour. So I'm really paying attention to that funny little squiggly shape underneath my nose. So I'm seeing
the philtrum.
Yeah, so it is the philtrum. But if we start putting labels on things, I don't want you to think nose. I don't want you to think lips or anything. I want you to think shapes and spaces. That's right brain thinking. When you start naming things, that's left brain thinking, and it will override your drawing ability. So just looking at that shape, I'm just going to do my best to follow the curves. As Nicolaides would say, I am almost imagining that my pencil is touching the model. And I find this tiny little triangle here that dips in, curving back out. Another teeny tiny little divot. This is what I've got so far. And I want to make sure that the end of this line will end at the bottom of the overall head shape that I've drawn. So think about where you're going. Otherwise, what tends to happen to me is I extend this line down too far. And then what is the angle of this little triangle kind of cutting in here? seeing it's a little shorter up top and then a little longer. Something like this. So that is what I've got. What was your question, Judith?
It appeared to me that the chin was too long, too high, too long down.
This here?
Yeah, compared to the picture, it's too long down, but that's okay.
Yeah, you know, now that I'm looking at it, it's really handy having this, when you know how it is when you see your drawing through a photograph, but you see it, like you see the mistakes a lot more clearly. I'm seeing this is a little steeper, and then this almost pops out more. And then what I would do is, this is where I would stop and I would check my work over and over again. I really would not expect me to get this line the first time. So I'm doing my best, you know, drawing with one hand like this with you guys. But really, this is where I would say, okay, let me stop everything. And this is where you start using your pencil trick to check those relationships. So here's an example. Is the length from the this line here, this very first line we started with, I'm going to say it's about the exact same length as the silver bit of my pencil. How does that compare with the upper lip? And if I look from my initial drawing, it looks like the upper lip is slightly
Shorter.
Oh, much shorter than I have it. So if I look at that now, this is much longer. So I can stop. Now that I've measured, I can say, okay, I need to bring that upper lip up. And this is the process of drawing anything, really. You make some lines, you check your work.
I like buildings.
Buildings, yeah.
I want buildings, straight lines. I can work with.
Much easier for sure.
Yeah, these
Any fancy
require
back
some, I guess just practice. And then I got this little shape here. And I'm not going to worry too much tonight. I want to show y'all the overall process more than I care about any of us having something that looks, you know, particularly like a likeness. But this is the process that you would use. And then I might check, okay, upper lip compared to bottom of the chin. This distance seems to be about the same as that distance. So that again is to get that little dip in there. But the negative space, really, I hope you find that as helpful as I did when I first started drawing profiles, because if you only use the, well, let me draw this line and then just go for it without that negative space, I would find I would spend so much longer having to fix my lines. I would focus too much on like the nose itself, the lips. It became a disaster. So this is what I've found has been the most helpful for me. Try other ways if you have the opportunity. If you want to do another profile tomorrow, if you want to see what it's like just going at it without paying attention to the negative space, and see how that goes. But looking for these, you know, what is this triangle? What is this triangle? What is this triangle? And obviously, forgive my loose usage of the term triangle, for obviously this is a kind of funny curvy thing and not so much a triangle, but negative spaces. What is the dip? What is that empty area between the other empty area? So now let's go ahead and start playing with the top of the face and continue that contour line. What I'm doing right now is I'm thinking, okay, how can I get the length of the bridge of the nose here correctly? So now that I have something drawn, I want to find some type of landmark. So what else can I compare what I want this line to be to, so that it will give me something to build off of? So what I mean by that is I'm looking at the image on the screen, and it seems to me, if I take the length of my nose and I hold my pencil up to it, pencil trick, that is roughly the same length as from my chin to my top lip. So I'm gonna find that length again, okay, from my chin to my top lip, about that length. That should be about how high my nose bridge goes.
But you've started an arbitrary outline of your head, and now it's no longer valid. So why would you bother wasting time drawing it in the first place?
It's important to have a guideline.
Wouldn't you
It's
say
not arbitrary. I'm gonna stop real quick because I did use my sighting ability to the best of my ability to get the same shape, and the shape is correct. It's almost always this kind of teardrop thing.
The shape I'm not questioning, but wouldn't you take from now the point of your chin to the nose is like the eyes are halfway, so we know that the nose is 3/4 down. The edge of the nose is 3/4 down. So couldn't you use that measurement, like, and say it's 2 inches or whatever it is, and then just place all the other markers on the page? So couldn't you determine now how big the head has to be, which you're right, it's going to be much bigger than you originally drew?
I think yes, if I'm understanding your question, which I...
So you know, for example, that 1/8 of the way up is from the chin to your bottom, to the middle of your lip.
I think we're getting too left brain here.
All right.
So if you're getting into divisions and trying to find the rules and follow, like, this should be the linear way that I need to think in order to draw this picture, that is a very left brain methodology, and we're trying to activate that right side of the brain thinking that's spatial and non-linear. So it's big picture thinking, and I think that's really the key as to why I always start with the big shapes, because you're trying to train your eye to see the big picture and the small details at the same time. Like, you start with that big picture and then you start your details, but you're always checking back into that big picture. But you're going to make mistakes along the way. So that's the trick about trying to teach drawing, is there are going to be so many ways that we could do this.
Okay, I understand what you're saying about getting out of the organized way of seeing things. Okay.
So I'm ending up making the rest of the head much larger. The nose is about as big as the forehead. I'm going to just suggest the back of the head. This is how much bigger my head is now, much larger. We'll just kind of leave it something like that. But I do want to talk to y'all tonight for sure about how to actually start getting these features in. And I feel like this nose is angling back too much. I know it's a ski slope, but okay. So let me start with the nose so we can find some of the interesting alignments that are going to help us get these features in place. And it'll be great that we draw this together tonight, and then with the recording, hopefully tomorrow will be helpful, or if you just want to go at it, practice. So, just like in the head face on, there's generally an alignment to where the eyes begin and where the nose outside of the nostrils begins. Now I'm looking at me, and if I'm holding my pencil up to find the vertical alignment from the eye to the nostril, and my eye is actually set back from the nostril if I'm comparing it on the screen. So I'm not following the rules of the average face. Because often in a portrait, those are aligned. So the best thing to do is just check and actually draw what you see and not what the rules are, because the rules don't really apply for most faces anyway. Silly art. So I kind of just drew a little bit of a shape of the nostril, looking at the dark line and using the negative space around it to leave. I see some white area underneath the nose. So this nostril is not touching the nose on any side. And then I see the shading of the nostril itself. And we see a kind of crease where my cheek is going to hit that. I just want to draw that in, looking at negative space and kind of trying to make it fit as best I can, because now I should be able to check the vertical alignment and see, okay, if my eyes are set back a little bit from where my nostril is, I'm going to have to stop and make another correction because my forehead is set back way too much for my face. So if I check, again, vertical alignment, I'm checking, okay, what matches where this line needs to come up, and I'm finding it just about equal to where the indent of my lips is, a little bit farther in from that. So my nose needs to angle up to there. Please know that making corrections this much is absolutely normal. So if you find yourself stopping and fixing a lot, please don't get frustrated. Please don't get upset. It's just part of the process. Even really talented artists stop and redraw quite often. And you know, it's really interesting. I feel like I've trained myself really well doing this in pen. And often I find drawing in pencil is not my bag anymore. I'm not as good as it used to be. So now I can go from my nose, find the vertical alignment, scooch back a little bit. Very exact measurement there. A little bit, scooch. And I'm gonna kind of guesstimate about where that line should be. And check it. And the side of the eye, and I did include this, let me pop up the screen real quick. At the bottom of the PDF download I gave you, you'll see a breakdown of the eye zoomed in, because that is generally one of the more complicated features of the face. So I hope that that's a handy guide to help you see, starting with the line work, what eyes tend to look like from the side, because it's not the best picture of my eye here from the side. But you still see that slight angle going down. The eyelashes cover a lot, so you can kind of get away with a dark line there. And I'm going to draw some really simple eyes there. And let me check. So if my eyes are here, from the bottom of my chin to the mid-eye, now that I have that built in, I would go in and I'd rather use that line to check and see, is my head in the right spot? So totally redoing my original head. I'm gonna blame drawing in the air next to me backwards for doing this. Okay. How are we doing so far, everybody? Trucking along? Ooh, let me pop that up, Judith. That looks really nice. Very nice. Okay. Oh, look at that. She's so lovely. So what I would say is you might want to just stop and erase the outside of the eye where it's touching the indent and work through this with us a little bit, because that is going to fix that and make it look like incredibly realistic. So if you erase that, notice the negative space between the bridge of the nose and where the eye is again. So the black of the eye is kind of this strange triangle.
But you see the bridge of the nose through the eye. I don't understand what you're saying. If I erase that, it's not following the photo of you.
So what I'm seeing in your drawing is that the pupil or the eyeball is touching the bridge of the eye. They're even. And in the photo, I see about a good chunk of space. My eyelashes do come out, they cross the bridge of the eye, but the eye itself is vertical. I'm going to zoom in on this and share the screen real quick.
I don't understand.
Okay, so this right here, this is where my pupil is in the picture. So if you look at the negative space, like here's the eyelash that's crossing here, the bridge of the nose, but there's all of this negative space here before the pupil itself actually begins.
I thought you meant something different. Okay.
Okay. So we're paying attention to this empty space right there. So I'm gonna draw. That's what I ended up with. And even there, I feel like I ended up drawing it a little too bigger than what I'm actually seeing. I can turn this into a little bit more eyeliner. And then I want to find what's the negative space between this part of the eye and where my eyebrows begin to grow out. It's kind of this funny curve here. Thinking about what's the negative space. I do have some shading here between the upper eyelid crease, which we do still see, and
but you're putting the eyebrows much higher than they are.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep adjusting that. I'm kind of
they have to come down,
building them down a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna keep checking as I go. Yeah, they need to come about like there, maybe. Then erase. Something a little more like that. So checking that negative space of the upper eye the best I can, looking to see the little lines of the eyebrow. But the thing I really want to leave y'all with, and I'm even going to erase this a bit more, is this triangle of the eye, and the eye in profile is often just so small. It's interesting, since we look at the eyes so much, I feel like they end up grabbing our attention. But I would leave my eyebrows about there. And now again, maybe take a second just to check my work and check my vertical alignment. Got this kind of curve of the cheek coming down that I can shade in a little bit more now. And I want to check and ask myself, where does the lip, the outside of the lip, align vertically?
Right.
And it's about the middle of my little triangle of the eye here. So I'm going to check that. So it really is not very far out at all.
Which part of the eye did you use with the chin?
I found it to be
The
about
eyeball?
right here.
The eyeball and the chin?
It seems to be set back a little bit farther than the eyeball, kind of the end of the pupil. And this is not a rule.
Is it the line of the chin?
I'm looking. I was looking for this line, and what I was connecting it to, what I found is maybe about right here.
All right.
And that wouldn't necessarily be true for somebody else's profile. I mean, what I would say is it's generally about mid-eye somewhere, but it would just depend on the person.
Right. Julia Roberts keeps going back.
Right.
She's got a big mouth. I mean, not a big mouth, a large, wide mouth.
Wide mouth. Now, just like with the portrait, I don't want to draw an actual dark, hard-edged line to show the lips. I just want to lightly shade and give a suggestion of where the slightly darker skin is here. Otherwise, it doesn't tend to look very realistic. And And if I'm adding shading, I might as well look and say, well, is there a little bit more shading I could add around the bottom of the nose? I can darken this line here to make it a little bit more realistic. Give myself this little freckle mole thing I have. And I do actually see a little bit more shading here. So what I'm doing today is I'm kind of scribbling general hatching lines. So whenever you're working with line work, if I just carelessly scribble without thinking, are these all going in the same direction, it will make my drawing overall seem sloppy. So I want to keep them going in the same direction, and I'll come back and smudge for a softer sort of skin texture. Think of where do I see the darks and lighter lights to get that value in. And these are like the interesting, the interesting features of the face in the profile. There's still a whole lot of head for us to draw. And we're not going to we don't have to spend quite as much time on it since, of course, it's also not as interesting to ear. Think of it almost like you're drawing fabric. It's almost like ins and outs of folds of fabric or something. So now that I'm all the way up to my forehead again, this is where I would stop and recheck those initial angles, since of course my head shape has changed so much. Like, does this still match? And find my forehead that way. So I'm bringing that up a little bit too much. Can I check in on yours again? Anybody? Judith? Naomi? Hold it up a little bit more. Yeah, big difference. Very nice. And you can scooch the upper eyelid back too, so it's just a tiny bit sticking forward over the opening of the eye of the pupil.
Don't understand.
Look at this one. So where your pupil is coming out, the overhang of the upper eyelid is just a smidge farther out than the opening of the eye itself, the iris or pupil, or whatever that is. It looked like you had a bit too much space. And I'm only being picky because our eyes find those tiny details and unconsciously latch onto them whenever we're doing.
The truth is, for me
portraits.
personally, not for this class.
And get some neck in while we're here. So now that the line or the most important lines of the features and the outline of the face itself have been drawn, thinking about placing the rest of the face. So I'm going to draw a general line of like, this is where my actual jaw is, but this is where my skin goes, a little bit lower than that. I can use negative space to kind of generally get the line of the neck. So again, I try to pay more attention to what is this kind of opening, this shape here, rather than thinking too much about drawing the neck, which might make me overemphasize a line. Here is a really handy dandy little proportion that I just love if you're into drawing portraits. If you go from the bottom of the corner of the eye and drop straight down to the chin, that same measurement is going to give you a really good feel for that same, from the edge of the eye to the back of the ear. So you're making like a 90 degrees. So.
Oh my God, my ear's in the totally wrong place then.
It might be. Let me see. It looks a little too close. Yeah. Oh no, but it's so detailed.
I'm not moving.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't move it. You can play with that tomorrow if you end up doing a portrait tomorrow.
Could you bring it a little more to the middle? Oh, yeah, perfect. If you could leave that for just a second.
Sure thing.
I'd like to get that.
I'm just here measuring to try and figure out where my ear goes. Well, close enough. So, I do that again from about there to there is the same as 90 degrees from there to there. So I have it too far in. And that's the thing, I do often have to double check twice because using the pencil trick, you have to move your pencil to stop and make the mark. So the first time might be off, and that's totally okay. So now that I have the outside of the ear, I'm gonna kind of make a general shape of the ear itself. Same rules apply. From the top of the ear, we have a horizontal alignment to about the top of the eye. That's where I'm gonna place that guy. Bottom of the ear, oh, interesting. I think it's because I took this picture just with my phone, and it's kind of a funny, not exactly a perfect portrait sideways angle. My bottom of my ear in this picture seems a little lower than a perfectly horizontal alignment, so I'm gonna just kind of scooch it a little lower to be accurate with the picture. And I won't worry too much about the exact details of the ear, but I do know this upper fold is really important for us to read it well as an ear. So I'm just going to suggest that. A little curve here. And the darkest dark of the ear is usually this kind of funny little curvature. So a little shading, and that will do the trick. Very lazy ear here, but I'm not worried about it. And I might add my earrings. You can come up with anything for the earrings. A little shading around the ear. And often just underneath the ear is about where the jawbone drops. So my lazy hatching here is going to give me a little bit of a shadow for the jawbone. I don't want to draw it as a hard, heavy line. Some people have that cut very, sharp edge jawbone. I certainly did. And then it's looking a little funny still because I don't have a hairline. So let's go ahead and add that in. And we're going to be pretty lazy again about the hair today because we are already exactly 8 o'clock. But just looking at the, again, a negative space, the hair swoops down from the top of the ear. I've got quite a bit of forehead around my head, a bit more hair at the temple. So this is a general hairline for me. And then I'm going to check the back of the ear first. And I'm just looking for that edge between the dark hair and the lighter area of my skin. Okay, the big overall shape of the hair, a little bit more poof here maybe. And so I totally lost my bun, so much for fitting it all on the page. Get some smudge there, and now I have a placement for the back of my neck. Do my best to get that in. Now what I would do is I'm going to use the wide edge of my pencil. I'm not going to use the tip of it. And I would go in and start to shade where I see the darker area. So Naomi, I wanted to point this out for you especially because you can see I'm not drawing the lines of the hair. I'm just finding the dark areas. First I start with the big shapes and then the values. And I am going to leave a little bright highlight, the there seems to be a highlight where the light is hitting my head about right here coming through. I'll let this be a little shiny. Get it dark behind there, and then I've got all these like tresses. And the thing about hair is you want to draw these shapes of tendrils more so than actual individual hairs. So I'm not drawing individual hairs, I'm drawing big shapes. Then I can come back and shade them in. Some of these are going to be lighter than the hair behind it. And then I would come back and darken everything but that highlighted area. And I'm not going to leave it totally white, and I do want it to kind of sort of, if I had a bigger charcoal, that would make this a lot easier for me if I was using something like that, or a big graphite stick where I could just come and make this all kind of equally dark. Since I've got this little pencil, just doing what I can. Then I'm going to come and do some slight texture lines. So I don't want this to be totally white, but if I just come in and do some lines that seem to match the hair only here in the highlighted area, I get much more of like a hair texture than I would have if it was only all dark, or if I tried to draw each individual hair. And since this is so dark over here, to really make this drawing look complete, I would need to spend a lot more time matching the values, squinting, saying where's the dark, where's the light areas, and of course since I've got dark hair in this picture, it would be important for me to match the full darkness to the hairs everywhere else. So I'm going to cheat right now and just use a much darker pencil. But that would be the final step to really make this drawing work, would be matching the values. So I'm just going to leave y'all with that, but kind of show y'all the general idea for now. So that is a quick and dirty portrait, and I hope the takeaway from this is, first, negative space is going to be super duper important as you're drawing your features of the face in. And finding measurements and checking your work. Assume you're going to make mistakes as you go through this if you're doing the full head, and keep checking the alignment. The measurements of where things go are pretty much the same as they are for the head itself.